Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, unless you've been hiding under a rock, leak season is here and in full force and probably almost over because spoiler season is just around the corner. I think about a week away, actually, at this point. But by the time that happens, all the cards might already be leaked. Disclaimer that I try to always say on these episodes, take everything I say with a grain of salt because these cards have not been officially confirmed. Let's jump into them. And another thing I try to remember to say on these episodes, the image that you're seeing right now is not the actual card image. Those will be showing up at the end. I just used MTG.design, an amazing website. If you haven't used it, make sure you check it out to actually make custom card versions of these cards because many of them are blurry, taken at weird angles for whatever reason, or like chopped up in some ways, but we can read most of the text, if not all the text on these cards. And yeah, so I just made a custom card with the art as well, custom art. So there you go. And there might be some spelling errors. My apologies. I think I can see one right now, actually. I think it's supposed to be obtruse appropriation. Double check that at the end of the episode with the cards, but I put abstruse. Maybe it's abstruse. An instant for, and this one was cut off slightly to white. We did see that. The other color I am actually guessing at with black. I'm guessing at that for what this card does. It's just cut off right there, so we can't exactly see it. It has Devoid, so the card technically has no color, I guess. Exile target non-land permanent. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend colorless mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. Interesting. And when it comes to like stealing spells or stealing permanents and stuff like that, like when it comes to like removing it and then playing it yourself, that tends to be a black type of thing, essentially, or blue sometimes as well. So we'll see where this ends up, I guess. But yeah, it's an interesting card. Exile target non-land permanent for 4 mana at instant speed. That's pretty, I mean, it's above curve, I guess, for where it is. I guess not without downside. Like, technically, with the downside, it's at 3 mana, right? You lose 3 life with that one, Anguished Unmaking. But this one's at 4, and you can get rid of any non-land permanent, and also you can, like, steal it. So that's really good, actually. So, yeah. I mean, colorless mana is or mana of any color. That's specific, but if you're playing in a deck that has a decent amount of colorless makers, again, like, even just, like, the Talismans have them, obviously, or certain non-basics do as well. Yeah, it's an interesting card. Definitely one that could see a good amount of play because removal at 4 mana, I mean, typically you're either getting like multiple removal, but it's also like more specific, like, hey, exile 2 artifacts and enchantments. This one's more like, okay, broad, but you also can get to steal that card. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. Moving on, I don't think Devoid really has, I mean, I guess Devoid, the card has no color. I typically, I'm sorry, Devoid, I do make fun of you quite a bit because you're kind of pointless most of the time, but I guess, again, certain things are like, Animar has protection, you know, from, you know, certain colors. Cool, this gets around that because that has no color. So keep that in mind. Next up, Wrath of the Skies. A sorcery for X white. You get X energy counters. Then you may pay an amount of energy, destroy each artifact, creature, and or enchantment with mana value less or equal to the amount of energy paid this way. I mean, this is pretty good, actually. So this is kind of like, not displacement wave. I always think of the wrong name for that one, but it's like X blue, bounce everything, essentially, that costs X or less. This is basically the exact same thing, but it is destroy, which typically is better. Obviously, it's not as good when it comes to like destroying your own things if you want them back in your hand, or ones that are like, hey, indestructible. It survives that for your opponents. But this one also, again, is flexible because it's like you can overpay that if you want, and then utilize, you know, whatever amount of energy you want, and you get to keep the excess energy. So obviously, for an energy deck, yeah, this is pretty good, obviously, because you can just like, oh, okay, I don't even care about really destroying too many things. I just want a bunch of energy, so dump a bunch of mana into this, and then, you know, store up a bunch of energy, maybe take out some small things. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Again, artifacts, creatures, enchantments, taking out those are very relevant things. Obviously, you're missing planeswalkers. Typically, that doesn't matter for most metas. You're missing battles. Typically, it doesn't matter for most metas. So, yeah, it's a very interesting card. Like, is this going to see a ton of play? No, but like it's a flexible board wipe and it can see a decent amount of play and also good for energy decks. Quite good out there. Moving on. Big mana decks as well, why would we consider this too because of the flexibility of it. Again, like if you've got like really high converted mana cost things, And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Let's make a one-sided board wipe by like taking out all the small things. Great. Moving on. White Orchid Phantom, a 2/2 Spirit Knight with flying and first strike for white. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to one target non-basic land. Its controller may search life for a basic land card, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. This teaches players you need to play more basics, because if they can't find anything when you destroy the land, that's their fault, not yours. I guess, unless you like repeatedly do this again and again and again, like mass land destruction. So that's just my opinion. Okay, so I mean, this is pretty specific in what it is. I mean, it's good body for 2/2 flying first strike, but like again, like this is more I feel like a limited card or other formats essentially. But like in Commander, unless like you've got a lot of players in your playgroup that are like all about Gaia's Cradle or like really overpowered, non-basics, then it's just like, okay, cool. I like take out your Guild Gate. All right, go get a basic. I mean, it's just okay. I mean, maybe if like a Blink deck could consider it. That being said, low to the ground flyers, maybe spirit decks, maybe night decks. Other than that, it does have relevant creature types, but like, meh, it's okay. Moving on, Roshan, Roaring Prophet. Roshan is back at it. A 4/4 giant shaman for 4 mana in Gruul. When Roshan enters the battlefield, mill 6 cards. You may put a card with X in its mana cost from among them in your hand. Interesting. And then tap, reveal any number of cards with X in their mana cost in your hand. Add 2 colors for each card revealed this way. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X. Interesting. So, old Roshan, I believe was just like tap for 4 colors. Or, I mean, when I say 4 colors, I know technically it's like colors. It's just easier to say 4 colors, okay? Tap for 4 colors, and you only spend that on X mana spells as well, I believe. I can't remember exactly. This is somewhat similar. I mean, there is some card advantage with that, right? Like, enter the battlefield, mill 6. You can definitely have some, like, maybe mill-based strategies that you can benefit off of, essentially, with this, obviously. More so, you're going to be like, okay, this is going to be a commander that's all about X spell tribal, essentially. So, getting a free X spell out of your milled cards in your hand, that's very nice. There's not too many ways to use and abuse ETBs in these colors. I mean, red does have some ways to make, like, token copies of a creature. Obviously, you get that ETB as well, but it would, like, go away. I mean, the creature would go away since it's legendary. So, yeah, there's not too many ways to use and abuse that, milling and getting extra X cards. That being said, if you just have a ton of X cards in your deck, this can probably tap for a ton of mana. I mean, let's just say, like, you just happen to luck out and, you have 7 X spells in your hand. Cool, this can tap for 14. It's quite nice. Obviously, you also do have some untap effects that you can take advantage of, too, like some threaten type effects in red. There's certain creatures and other things that can untap in green as well, or like, a vitalize kind of spell, so keep that in mind as well. But yeah, I think just like throwing a bunch of X spells in a deck around this could be quite fun, so make sure you're considering that. Obviously could be a card in the 99 for an X spell deck as well, or even maybe like a mill deck that can take advantage of an ETB. Keep that in mind. I mean, obviously, like a mill deck that maybe has some X spells into it, it might be pretty specific, but you never know. Next up, Ripples of Undeath, an enchantment for 1 and a black. Beginning of your pre-combat main phase, mill 3 cards. Then you may pay 1 and 3 life. If you do, put a card from among those cards into your hand. So this one's interesting. It reminds me of like Sylvan Library-ish, kind of, but obviously nowhere near as good as that. That card is brokenly good and incredibly expensive. I believe on the reserve list too. But yes, this one is like, hey, okay, are you a mill deck? Or self-mill deck, I should say. Yeah, that's already just good, all right? Enchantment 4/2. Enchantments are probably the hardiest type of permanent out there. It's the most difficult, not the most difficult to deal with, but like it's going to stick around more than like, say, a creature, obviously, because there's a lot of creature removal. There's also like Vandal Blast out there. It's easy to play for artifacts, too. More artifact removal out there, I would say, than enchantments. Planeswalkers you can swing at. Battles, yeah, you're trying to swing at them yourself. This one, though, yeah, again, 2 mana, low to the ground, get it out, mill yourself repeatedly each turn. That's nice. 3 cards, a decent amount. On top of that, though, again, there is potential card advantage out of this. So this sees play outside of probably self-mill, too, right? You can pay 1. 3 life is a lot to pay, right, to get 1 of those cards. That being said, it's kind of like, I mean, Surveil at the same time, because you're basically like, okay, like I get 3 cards that are milled. I don't need 2 of those maybe, or actually I want 2 of those in my graveyard anyways, and then I really want that 1 in my hand. I'm paying 1 mana, which is not a lot for a card, obviously, when it comes to card advantage. 3 life is steep, but it's probably worth it. Again, if you're looking at the top 3 and like get your best of the top 3 and you're paying 1 to do so, that's definitely worth it. So this is interesting. It's kind of like I mean, it's in the same role-ish as like a Phyrexian Arena, but obviously different. This gives you access to more cards, kind of. I mean, obviously, there's like 3 great cards that you just milled, and you're like, but I want all of them. That's unfortunate. I mean, you just milled 2 of them, but still. This gives you kind of, you get to go deeper into your deck quicker than a Phyrexian Arena. It's lower to the ground. It does cost mana to keep doing this, though, obviously, and getting cards out of it. And 3 life is not nothing, but still, it's interesting. I do think that this one can see a decent amount of play. Obviously, again, I said self-mill, but yeah, decks that just want to dig quickly, get cards, a good amount of card advantage, enchantment decks can consider as well. It's a very interesting card. I like the design of this one. Moving on. Power Balance. This one just seems absurd. Enchantment for red. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost if the 2 spells have the same mana value. Okay. Yeah, this one's ridiculous. This is an absurd card. This is, I mean, not going to say broken, but obviously it's just like in Commander, this is so much better in a format like Commander than it is in other formats typically because, hey, you've got 3 opponents. So they're going to be casting things, and when they do, you just get potentially free things off the top of your library. So now here's the thing, obviously, like when you do reveal that top card of your library, your opponents get to see what that is. So let's say one opponent casts a spell that costs 3. You reveal the top card of your library, it costs 2. The other opponents now, and that opponent, all know that your spell costs 3 on top, or 2 on top. And if they don't want you to have that, and it's worthwhile for them to not cast their 2 mana spells until you draw that card and they know it's not on top anymore, then they might do that. That being said, obviously you can play around with like top of library manipulation effects. You can mill yourself. You maybe have, a way like, I was going to say future sight, but like you probably don't want your opponents knowing exactly what your card is. But one of those cards essentially that allows you to look at the top card of your library. Like, I don't know what the new Fibble Flip just came to mind, but that one. Knowing what the top card of your library is without your opponents knowing it, you can kind of decide like, okay, like that costs 8. Probably opponents that I'm playing against right now aren't playing things that cost 8. So maybe I'll mill that away, or maybe I'll cast a draw spell to get that into my hand to get something more likely to be cast. That being said, just like random value out of this is quite nice. So yeah, you get this down pretty early, and opponents just casting spells here and there and everywhere, and you're just like, oh, I just got free things off the top of my library. That's pretty spicy. Is this for every deck? No, absolutely not. But like, that can be a lot of value to be had for the right deck out there. A really cool enchantment, and one that when it comes down across the table from me, I'm going to be pretty scared to do what I wanted to do on the previous turn. Be like, oh, do I play my Fact or Fiction now? Because if I just happen to hit something that costs 4 at the top for that player, might not be a good thing for the table. So we shall see. It's a really cool card. Moving on. Amphibian Downpour. An enchantment aura with Flash and Storm for 2 and a blue. So Storm, when you cast a spell, you copy it for each spell cast before this turn. Choose targets for the copies. Enchant creature. Enchant creature loses all abilities. And a blue frog with base power and toughness 1/1. This is really spicy. All right, so this is like a mass, was it Frogify? Or I can't remember what the original one of these effects essentially is, but like being able to just take out a bunch of creatures like without taking them out. You are turning them all into essentially useless creatures again. 1/1s that don't have any abilities and are now just frogs, blue frogs. So just saying like, hey, all your creatures are that. I mean, when it comes to like what you want to do with this, typically it's like make your opponent's commanders into frogs. Probably is the main thing in Commander, because decks are typically revolving around people's commanders. And by saying, okay, now your commanders are essentially useless. The thing with this, though, is you might just want to focus on one player, because if you, like, say again, like, do 2 players with, like, hey, your commander's a frog, your commander's a frog too, ha 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 ha, they're probably just going to be like, okay, hey, you, yeah, I'll swing my 1/1 frog at you if you'll block with your 1/1 frog, and then we can just both get our commanders back in the command zone and then just continue this game. Oh, okay. Those kind of things might happen, because, again, this isn't like, what's the one, Darkstone Mutation, where it actually gives them, like, indestructible, and then it's, like, hard to deal with them for the player that actually wants to deal with them themselves. So it's an interesting card. It obviously can play into enchantment decks as well, potentially, because, like, yeah, getting more enchantments and playing an Enchantress deck is usually a very, very good thing. In fact, like, some have, like, some effects are basically like, draw whenever enchantment hits the battlefield. Cool, you're casting this, you're storming with it, and you're probably getting a lot of these. It's quite spicy. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Frogs. Everything's a frog except for your creatures probably at a certain point once you get things going. It's very spicy. I like the design. Moving on. Detective's Phoenix. A 2/2 enchantment creature Phoenix for a 3 mana in red. Bestow for a red. For those who don't remember Bestow, basically, hey, it's like an enchantment aura. It's a creature that turns into an enchantment aura, essentially, that just, like, attaches to a creature. Turns into an aura, I should say. It's already enchantment. Red, collect evidence 6. To pay this bestow cost, you pay 6 and exile cards with mana value 6 away from your graveyard. I think we just got collect evidence from Murder's Call of Manor. Hence the Detective Phoenix. Flying Haste. A chain creature gets +2/+2 and has flying and haste. You may cast from your graveyard by using its bestow ability. Interesting. So essentially, yeah, I mean, this is pretty, I mean, like, it's a culmination of, like, 2 different effects that I feel like might go together, but it's interesting that they go together. I like that. Like, being able to bestow out of your graveyard is pretty spicy. Collect evidence 6 is a decent amount, but again, like, not really. Like, depending on the deck, like, you might just have one card in your graveyard that, like, costs 6. You're like, okay, that, cool. Bring this back out. And being able to bring this back out to give a creature +2/+2 flying and haste for just a single red mana, and yeah, collect evidence 6, but, like, just a single red mana when it comes to, like, the mana investment, that's pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I can see this one seeing some play, like, maybe for more specific decks out there. Like, that being said, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool card. Like, Phoenix Tribal decks, obviously. Enchantment decks might would have considered as well, but if you just, like, need, like, your commander or something to be hasty, and you know you're going to have things in your graveyard, potentially, and you've got higher converted mana costs, 1 mana to just give your commander haste, essentially, when it comes out, that can be quite spicy, or other things haste as well. Interesting. Next up, Ashling Flame Dancer, a 4/4 elemental shaman for 4 mana in red. Ashling is back at it again. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. That's quite nice. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, discard a card, then draw a card. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, 2 damage each opponent and each creature they control. It's the 3rd time, add red, 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 red. Very interesting, very spicy. So, kind of like Spellslinger Ashling in a way, with also, like, saving up mana. So kind of like it's the original Omnath, the green Omnath, like, you know, hey, you get to keep your mana. Great, good for you, as long as it's red. So keep your mana, sling some spells, you know, get some, I was gonna say looting, but it's more rummaging. Discard, then draw. Rummaging. So some card selection there, which is nice. Second time, it's like, okay, ping each opponent and each of their creatures. Obviously, just 2 damage. I mean, it's not bad, right? Like, again, if you're playing against, like, a token strategy that goes wide with a bunch of low-to-the-ground creatures and not a bunch of anthems out in play yet, it's like, oh, okay, cool. You got a bunch of 1/1s or 2/2s. They're all taken out. I just cast 2 spells. They're all gone. Repeatable mini board wipe. That being said, obviously, you're going to want some, like, damage doublers and damage triplers, you know, depending on your budget. Like, City on Fire, very good card. I think it's only $3 or so right now, but still. Yeah, tripling up damage, being like, oh, okay, 6 damage each opponent's face and all their creatures controlled. That's probably good enough to wipe most of the creatures, if not all the creatures, off the board. And being able to just keep repeatedly doing that, again, each turn, if you've got the spells to do so, that's really, really good. And then, obviously, the third one, just, like, getting your mana back, that's quite nice. And, obviously, you don't even have to use that mana. Again, you can just bank that mana with this as long as you can keep this commander in play. So you're going to want some ways. You definitely want some ways to protect this commander. Keep it around. You want some Spellslinger-type synergies as well. Probably some wheel effects as well to, like, reload your hand, too. Yeah, it's pretty spicy. So, yeah. Wheels, damage doublers, damage triplers, and yeah, maybe Infect too. Why not? Give Ashling Infect with Crafted Exoskeleton, and then take your opponents out in no time with Infect as well. So yeah, Spellslinging, crazy, awesome Ashling. I'm down for it. This is pretty sweet. Moving on. Warren Soul Trader, a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard that I don't like to see, but here we go. We're doing a black. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, create a treasure token. Ooh, okay, that's crazy. So this is basically kind of like a better but worse Phyrexian Altar in a way. It's worse because it's on a creature and you have to pay 1 life. Okay, like, those are the things that make it worse. This being on a creature that does have 3 relevant creature types. 3 very relevant creature types, though: zombie, goblin, and wizard. So any of those tribal decks can probably consider this. It's a very good card. Yeah, Phyrexian Altar, again, is like sacrifice a creature, gain 1 mana, or add 1 mana of any color, right? This is technically better with the benefit, right? Making a treasure is better than just making 1 mana of any color right then and there. I guess unless, like, on a very off chance that opponent happens to have something that makes your artifacts come to play tapped, or, like, you can't use artifact abilities, but, like, that's few and far between as to when those scenarios happen, okay? Blind Obedience, I guess, would be one, right? That's artifacts can play tapped, I think, right? Let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, being able to just, again, freely, it does cost a life, yes, but not having to pay mana, not having to tap this, just freely make treasures by sacrificing creatures, that's crazy good. That is brokenly powerful. This, I mean, can combo with quite a few things out there. Just at a base level, I mean, being able to throw this in an aristocrat-style deck and be like, okay, cool, yeah, sacrifice your creatures for value now. Oh, and also, like, you probably have, like, I mean, if you have, like, a, let's say, like, a Marionette Master in there as well. Okay, also, like, you sacrificed a creature. Cool. Now you also drain based off of sacrificing the treasure token. Or Mirkwood Bats, I should say, as well. Is that the one, right? Where you make a token, you sacrifice a token, you're draining opponents each time, essentially. Your treasures, they pushed really far over the past couple of years, and this is kind of one of the high points of treasures now. I mean, obviously, okay, Dockside Extortionist is the high point of treasures when it comes to broken things. This is really good. Though this is a very, very good card. It's going to be incredibly expensive, I can imagine. Yeah, I'm kind of wishing they didn't make this one, but again, it's just I'm a player out there who doesn't like treasures nearly as much as some other players do. Again, treasures is a very popular theme on EDH Rec. It just is. It's like the third most popular theme out there. This is way powerful. So again, if you've got a treasure-focused deck, if you've got a token-based strategy, if you've got an aristocrat strategy, if you've got a zombie, goblin, or wizard deck as well, I mean, this can just see play in a multitude of decks out there. It's crazy good. I guess a life loss deck as well, like a life swap deck I consider too, because yes, you are paying life to do so, but again, 1 life out of 40 is nothing at all. So a crazy good card that can lead to some very explosive, if not broken, if not combo-y turns. Moving on. The card that I'm going to be talking about in the quick take on this episode, the Necrobloom. A 2/7 plant. 2/7, there you go. I like those stats. These days, it's just like Wizards like, it costs 4 mana of 3 different colors. Make it a 5/5. Like, what, why? Why, Wizards? No, give me this stuff. Give me a 2/7 where you're like, who cares about power, all the toughness, great blocking plant? For 1 in Abzan colors, Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. We've heard that before. I'll talk about the card here in a bit. But yeah, that's really good already. Secondly, though, land cards in your graveyard have dredge to what? What? All right. If you draw a card, for a reminder for those who don't know dredge, if you draw a card, you may mill 2 cards instead. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, but I believe I looked it up properly on Scryfall. There has only been one land in the history of Magic that has had dredge, I believe, or at least, I mean, maybe I didn't look at like uncards, but like legal card in Commander that has dredge that is a land card. Dredge is not a very common mechanic at all. I think it came out in like time spiral times essentially, but yeah, dredge is kind of a weird mechanic. It's like, all right, this card's in your graveyard. You can be like, I want that back. Okay, instead of drawing, I'm just gonna mill some cards and I get that back. In milling cards, when you're like when I was a new player, I was like, why would I want to lose my cards? Why would I want to mill? And it's like, oh no, there's plenty of great things that you can do with mill. Milling can be a resource for you. You're like, okay, I fill my graveyard, which I can utilize in certain ways. There's also some crazy combos that you can pull off with this. I mean, one very particular combo where you're like, yeah, that commander that has that combo already in the deck that we'll get to here in a bit is very upset that this is not a card that can fit in that color combination. That being said, that commander can fit this color combination. You might know it already. I'm not going to spoil it. We're going to talk about it here in a bit, though. So this commander, again, literally if you just want to go like Landfall, make a bunch of creatures, have a bunch of different land names, great. Again, it does say 7 or more land names. So you do want to have, again, like I'm a big proponent of, hey, a lot of basics goes a long way. You also might want to consider some, non-basics as well, so you have some different named lands. Make sure you're considering that. If you want, again, and there's going to be times, we'll talk about another card here in a bit, there's going to be times where you actually just, like, want the plants. You're just like, no, I've got, like, Avenger of Zendikar in this deck, like, I want the plants. Like, I have in my hand, I guess I would say. Like, I want the plants right now, so, like, I'll hold off on playing different named lands. I'll get Avenger of Zendikar and play, and I'll make those plants massive. Or maybe you have some zombie tribal kind of things as well. It's a very interesting card. So this is, like, self-mill / potentially combo / potentially zombie / potentially plant / potentially landfall. There's some really cool things that you can do with this. So yeah, go wide strategy as well. I like the design of this one. And again, I just like that Wizards is like, get back to, again, like, everything doesn't have to be about power. It just seems like, again, like, when we see a commander that is, like, literally 3 colors or whatever, they're just like, well, it's hard to get out. No, it's not. We need to give them a lot of power for that. Again, I was expecting, like, a 5-4 or whatnot, and I was like, nope, it's a 2-7. Yay! Good, I like that. Okay. So, interesting. Let's talk about the Necrobloom in the quick take. Again, a reminder that, yes, there's a card list link to the cards I'm talking about with this potential commander. Again, I say potential commander in the description below. If you're really excited about this one, you're like, hey, play group, are you okay that I play with this? I recommend that you ask them first and be like, okay, like if I proxy it, can I play with it? Can I build around it right now? And like, even if it comes out and it's not an actual card, which again, with these leaks, the vast majority of them, like I'm 99% positive that these are real cards. That being said, don't go in like buy an entire deck and build around this without being 100% sure, like waiting until spoiler season, this card actually gets revealed to be a real card. Or again, if your playgroup's like, oh, it's okay, like even if you just like want to proxy it and play with the proxy, we're completely fine with that. That's great too, okay? So keep that in mind. But if you want to wait around, you know, to wait until the actual spoiler season comes out, that's great. You should probably, for the most part, unless your playgroup's okay with it. But yes, make sure you like check out that list and like bookmark it potentially, okay? Let's talk about the cards now. Okay, so first up, and I'm not saying you need to include this card in the deck, I am just saying that, hey, this is just a reference card to say, I believe that Dakmar Salvage is the only card out there that actually has Dredge that is a land. I could be very wrong with that, but basically, this commander turns every single one of your lands into a Dakmar Salvage, which is pretty spicy. Really spicy, in fact. This one enters the battlefield, taps for a black, but now every single one of your lands is essentially that, which again is so cool. And there's some crazy things that you can do with it. So that being said, Perilous Forays. Something that doesn't care about that dredge factor, but I guess the dredge factor does matter in that, like, you can guaranteed hit landfall triggers with this commander because, again, like, if you're like, oh, I really want my landfall trigger this turn, instead of drawing my card, I'll mill 2, I'll get a land out, I'll play my land. You can guaranteed hit landfall triggers, which is really cool, as long as you got a land in your graveyard. Perilous Forays, an enchantment forward, 3 green. Love this card. Crazy good. Pay 1, sacrifice a creature, switch life for a land card with a base land type on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Yeah, that's a very good one. Being able to go, again, like, get different lands out of your deck and, like, get to those 7 different names, that can definitely help with, essentially. But also, again, this is just, okay, I pay a mana. I sacrifice a creature. I get a land. It ETBs. With my commander's landfall trigger, I get a 0/1 plant or zombie, depending on the situation. Regardless, that's a creature. Okay, cool. I'll pay 1 mana. I'll sacrifice that creature. I'll go do it again. Being able to create creatures with your lands is crazy good. Again, it's kind of like a mini combo with this commander where it's like, you're not going infinite with it, but like you can go get, essentially for each mana that you have, each 1 mana you have, that's like, okay, go ramp, go get a land. That's crazy powerful, can get you way ahead of your opponents in absolutely no time if you're set up properly. Yeah, that's quite spicy. And keep in mind, like with, oh gosh, like with that treasure creating zombie goblin wizard that we just talked about, that could not go infinite, but it could just get like every single land out of your deck, essentially. Oh, no, because that one needs to sacrifice creatures for mana too. So I guess if you had another way to make creatures, then there you go. Okay, a little off topic. Let's move on to Undead Augur. Whenever it or other zombie control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Again, life is a resource in Commander. Who cares? 1 life for 1 card is well worth it any day of the week. It's great. Again, like with this kind of a commander, I mean, no, not really. You wouldn't just like go like life swap potentially. And maybe you go very specific. Regardless, again, this one says, all right, if you're building your deck to get different name lands in play, get those plants to turn into 2/2 zombies, great. Then you can essentially take advantage of, again, zombie tribal type effects like this one where, hey, you're sacrificing your zombies or, you know, your zombies get dealt with, you're replacing them with card draw. So it's like landfall equals creature, which equals card draw, minus life equals opposite Tatiova, kind of. It's kind of weird. But yeah, again, being able to take advantage of zombie tribal type synergies can be great with this kind of a commander if you are building to that, because obviously a 2/2 is better than a 0/1 most of the time. We'll talk about here in a bit. Wayward Servant. Whenever the zombie enters the battlefield under control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Again, kind of like making up for that life loss maybe with the Undead Augur, but basically, hey, now all of a sudden my landfall actually drains players as well, gives me benefits. Again, you can go zombie tribal with this. You can do some pretty cool things. I mean, Liliana's Mastery, just a very base level, like any kind of a zombie anthem can be great. Zombies you control get +1/+1. On top of that, it enters the battlefield to get 2 more 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So yeah, I mean, 6 power across 2 bodies already with this, plus just extra anthem for your, well, team potentially. I guess your zombie team that you're making with your lands, you know, this commander. Moving on. Crawling Sensation. I mean, you can just really go with like a really go wide strategy with this kind of commander. There's other enchantments out there like Zendikar's Royal or Rampaging Baloths or whatever that one is that makes the 1/1s. Anyways, a Merry Angel? I don't know. There's a lot of landfall, make a creature, but also on the other end of things, you can also mill and make creatures too, maybe. Crawling Sensation, beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 2 cards. Again, milling can already be a good thing with this deck. You might have like certain triggers that happen when milling, including this one. Whenever one or more land cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Again, you're probably going to be running a good amount of lands with this kind of a deck out there, so when you're milling, either with your dredge, with other things as well, including this, cool. Mill further, get more creatures out. Again, utilize them as a resource to sacrifice them for this or that, this other kind of benefit, like Perilous Blaze we talked about earlier, or maybe get an Anthem out, make your creatures much more massive as well. The Myco Tyrant, there we go. Star, Elder Fungus, a trample that costs 3 mana in Golgari. Its power does for each equal number of creatures you control that are fungi and or saplings. Unfortunately, not plants, so keep that in mind. That being said, beginning of your end step, create X 1/1 black fungus creature tokens. With this creature can't block, where X is the number of times you descend this turn. And again, you're descending each time a permanent card. That is always just so confusing because, like, tokens are technically permanents. Technically a card, really, if you're holding it, but, like, it's not a card, technically. Okay, rules, or why don't you just say, like, non-token permanent? Wizards, make it a bit simpler, please. Okay, anyways, is putting your graveyard from anywhere. So basically, though, like, if you are milling with, again, dredge or whatnot, yeah, you can get a lot of cards in your graveyard, a lot of permanent cards in your graveyard, and get a lot of extra creature tokens with this. Moving on. Turn Timber Sower, a 3/3 elf druid. Whenever one or more land cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. This one ensures that you are, well, again, not limited to just once each turn like Crawling Sensation. Again, so if you've got a bunch of different ways to mill yourself, a bunch of different ways maybe even to discard lands, we'll talk about here in a bit, yeah, you can get a lot of value out of this. You can also pay green, sacrifice 3 creatures, and bring a land back from your graveyard to your hand. Maybe not as relevant with this kind of a strategy because, again, you can just dredge your lands if you want to. But again, like, if you don't want to like give up a draw for that, yeah, you can get lands back with this as well. And also being another sacrifice outlet is probably not a bad thing when it comes to maybe playing into Riskret style strategies. Next up, talk about cycling lands because those can be pretty interesting. Baron Moor enters the battlefield tapped, taps for a black, can cycle for a single black mana. This is interesting. Rule slayers out there, please let me know about this, but I don't believe you could just, like, cycle and dredge the same land. I think it would have to, like, it has to be a different land, I believe. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, if you have, like, multiple cycling lands, you're like, okay, I cycle my Baron Moor. Okay, I get my Tranquil Thicket. No, what is that the one that, I think that's Tranquil Thicket. Whatever one is the one in green. Cool, I cycle this one. All right, I, instead of drawing that card, I will dredge 2. I will get my, green cycling land in my hand. I will cycle this one. I'll get my Baron Moor back in my hand. So you just keep, like, milling yourself for 2 for just 1 mana again and again and again with, like, those cycling lands specifically. And actually with that, you can kind of do some funny things because let's talk about a card like Fluctuator. I love this card. Cycling abilities you activate cost up to 2 less to activate. This is probably more specific, but again, if you're, like, going, like, heavy into, like, this cycling land thing, you can do some pretty crazy things with it. And obviously you're in black, you've got ways to tutor, so yeah, you can do that. And then with something like a Scattered Groves, which has cycling for 2, you can cycle that for free. So with this, if you've got 2 lands that can both cycle for free, you're like, okay, I cycle my Scattered Groves to get another one of these, like, dual land cycling things out of my graveyard by milling 2, back into my hand, cycle that one for free. Out of my graveyard, milling 2. You just mill yourself entirely with this. Have whatever other benefits you have for milling yourself like we talked about earlier. Or if you just want to lose the game and show that you can do it in a really crazy way, then do that, I guess. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to win. I mean, I guess if you had like Sir Conrad the Grim, you could probably win right then and there, right? By just pinging opponents whenever things hit your graveyard. So keep all that craziness in mind. I mean, if it was me, though, I might go in a different direction because I'm a sucker for those influence. One of my favorite cards, actually. I just love this card. Champion for green, discard a land card, create a 2/2 bear creature token. Yeah, so being able to turn your lands into creatures is quite nice. Again, especially when you can get those lands back with dredging. And that's where things kind of get crazy when you decide to go in a route with something like Rite of Harmony. I love this card. Whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under control this turn, draw a card. You can flash it back as well. Keep in mind, it does not specify, unlike the vast majority of other things out there that are like non-token. This doesn't specify non-token. So even when token creatures enter the battlefield, you can draw a lot of cards with this. There's also other ones you can do, like with Garrick's Pack Leader or whatnot, like, but you'd have to increase the power to like 3. That being said, Rite of Harmony is probably the easiest way to go with this. You like essentially are like, okay, cool. I discard a land. I make a 2/2 bear. I draw a card. Okay, cool. I get this other land back out of my graveyard by dredging 2. I make another bear by discarding it. Again, again, again. Basically, mill yourself, make a ton of bears. What's not to love about that? Yeah, I mean, you can do some crazy, weird things with this commander, and also just some really, well, really powerful things with this one, too. Moving on, so the very first thing I thought about when I read this commander, I mean, I guess after I got past the landfall part, I was like, oh, it's a landfall commander. Okay, cool. And then I was like, oh, wait, reds 2 for your lands was definitely the Gitrog monster, because the Gitrog and Dakmor Salvage are mentioned in the same sentence many times, because Dakmor Salvage and the Gitrog monster go infinite quite easily. A 6/6 that has Death Touch that costs 5 in Golgari. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster, sacrifice a land. You may play additional land on each of your turns. On top of that, Bell, whenever one of our land cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So, yeah, your lands have dredge too. You can get them back in your hand, and then you can easily get them back in your graveyard by discarding them. And when you do that, well, you get to draw a card, which lets you, get it back. And I guess I was talking about that earlier, the cycling one. Is that? No, because cycling is the ability itself. Having something else discarded, I think you'd be able to get it back with Dakmor Salvage. Let me know in the console rules letters out there, but yes, this definitely works with Dakmor Salvage. Definitely works with any of these lands now, essentially. So any land plus Gitrog plus discard outlet equals I draw my library, or not draw my library, I mill my entire library, essentially. Putrid Imp. Yeah, discard a card from your hand. It gains flying until end of turn. It also can become a 2/2 that can't block if you've got Threshold, which you will get to. So, yay, for 1 mana. Look at that. That being said, this is just like an example, and this actually isn't a budget buy, or this isn't a pricier pick. This is a budget buy. This card's actually less than $1. The cards I'm talking about now are more than $1. This one made it just so I can actually give a reference. Anyways, having a free discard outlet plus Gitrog plus your commander plus any land equals go infinite, essentially. So yeah, you could do like a combo centric deck with this commander. I mean, just like use Protean Hulk, essentially, right? A 6/6 beast that costs 7 mana. When it dies, search your life for any number of creature cards with total mana value 6 or less with them on the battlefield, then shuffle. Gitrog is 5. Putrid Imp is 1. Congratulations, there's your combo. Do you have a land in your hand? You probably win. With that kind of a strategy, you typically would have like a shuffled Titan as well in the deck, so you just can keep like keep milling yourself, keep shuffling your deck, keep doing it again, getting some crazy things to happen, essentially. So yeah, there is that. Now, outside of combo, also there's just some crazy things that can happen with higher end cards too, like Beseiju Who Endures, or like any of these channel lands. Very, very good with this commander. You can tap for a green. It doesn't come into play tapped or anything like that. It's legendary, though. That being said, it doesn't really matter in commander that's legendary. In fact, that's usually a good thing for certain lands out there, for decks out there. Anyways, channel for 1 and a green. Discard it. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land opponent controls. That player may search the library for a land with a basic land type on the battlefield, then shuffle. This costs 1 less to activate it for each legendary creature control. It didn't really need that at all, Wizards, but okay. Yeah, so basically a 1 mana removal spell, kind of along the lines of like a Path to Exile-ish, but destroy, and again, for artifacts and enchantments or non-basics. So, very relevant, and again, you're just like, okay, I destroy that. Awesome, cool. And like, usually, like, that's it for your Beseiju. Like, you did the thing. With this deck, it's like, oh, okay, cool, an opponent got another artifact that I don't like in play. All right, instead of drawing a card this turn, I'll get back my removal spell out of my library, or my graveyard, by milling 2 from my library, and then I'll just pay 1 mana, probably, right, and then destroy that again. So, yeah, these kinds of lands that you can actually utilize in these ways. You can keep, like, getting back to your graveyard, then back again and again and again. Can be very, very good. Like, Strip Mine in certain strategies and certain metas out there. Probably not for more casual metas because, yeah, land destruction is not typically welcomed. I mean, like, individual usually is okay. Obviously, if it's like, okay, like, yeah, you've got, like, a Gaia's Cradle. Let's get rid of that. This, I should say what it does. Tap for a colorless or tap sacrifice to destroy target land. So essentially with this, you can just be like, okay, I destroy your land. I dredge. I get this back. I probably, additional land I can play this turn, whatever it is. I destroy your land. Yeah, there's some crazy things that you can do with this one as well. Again, only for certain metas, I would say, probably higher competitive power ones, but yeah. Moving on, Field of the Dead. Okay, so this is another card that was kind of referenced earlier where it's like, I've heard that before. What does this do? Enters the battlefield, taps for a colorless. When it or another land is battlefield you control, if you control 7 more lands with different names, create 2 black zombie creature token. So apparently this brand new commander has been spending a lot of time in the Field of the Dead. Maybe this commander lives in the Field of the Dead. Who knows? But essentially, if you get this out, you're getting double of that commander's trigger once you get to 7 lands with different names, because essentially, again, every single time a land comes into play, you're getting 2 zombies. So have fun with that. So, yes. And again, this is a differently named land, too, so it adds to that amount. There are times where you don't want to actually, go from the plants to the zombies. We'll talk about here in a little bit, but most of the time it is better to, get a 2/2 versus just a 0/1, even if there's no other, kind of tribal implications with this as well. I mean, even a card like Hickory Woodlot can be utilized in this deck. I mean, I like this card. This is, in, some of my janky decks that are okay, all lands or whatever. But this can be a very janky but funny card, Maelstrom Otter? Anyways, comes to play, tap with 2 depletion counters on it, tap, remove a depletion counter from it, add 2 green mana. If there's no depletion counters on it, you sacrifice it. Obviously, it's been Oracle texted since then. It's not worded in that exact way, but you get the gist, essentially. So this is a land that is it is a good bursty land where it's okay, first turn comes to play, tap, you don't get any use out of it. That being said, the next 2 turns, you're getting 4 mana out of it in total, right? But then you lose the land. That being said, with this commander, you can obviously just, get it back. So it can be, a good, bursty land that you can then, okay, cool, I'll dredge, I'll get this back, I'll play it again. I need another burst of mana in a couple turns. Utilize it in that way. So make sure you're just considering those kind of things as well. I mean, Roaming Throne, it's really hard not to recommend this for basically any commander that has a triggered ability. Yeah. Okay, a 4/4 golem with ward 2 that costs 4. Enters battlefield, choose a creature type. Choose any of your creatures, any of your commander's types, and anything that might, line up with other creatures in your deck. It's a chosen type addition to other types. If a triggered ability of another creature controlled the chosen type triggers additional time. Yeah, this is good in tribal decks out there, essentially. Also just good with any commander essentially that has a triggered ability that you care about. This is good. So yeah, being able to make 2 creatures instead of 1, a very, very good thing. Obviously with that, parallel lives. Yeah, that is essentially another way to just double it up. There's a lot of token doublers in these colors. I mean, Annoying Procession in white and a lot in green. Parallel Lives, enchantment for 3 and a green. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Very simple, very effective. This doubling season, a lot of Primal Vigor, whatever, is that the one? A lot of other things, essentially, that just double up tokens. Consider them, obviously, because if I don't mention them, I get yelled at in the comments below and be like, well, this commander makes tokens. Yes, it's good with that then, okay? Death Baron. Again, if you are going zombie tribal, or at least including some aspects to it. Again, if you are saying okay, I really want to get different name lands out there. I want to get to 7 different named lands very, very quickly. Then cool. Go for it. I mean, use snows too, actually. Yeah, right there. Anyways, you can get there pretty quickly if you're actually focused on doing so. And if you've got the right amount of ramp and that kind of things as well, the right lands in your deck. Cool, you can do so. So get to zombies and then have this in play. A 2/2 zombie wizard for 3 mana that says skeleton creatures you control and other zombie creatures you control get ++1 and have death touch. Now your 2/2 zombies, which again are just 2/2s, not bad, not great, obviously in the grand scheme of things in Commander. It's oh, okay, cool, another 3/3s. Oh, that's better with death touch. Okay. It's gonna be really hard for your opponents to swing at you with things that aren't evasive. And then also it's gonna be hard for them to block your army now too. Death touch is huge, so yeah, this card is great with that. That being said, again, you might want to just keep your plants as plants. Again, I talked about Avenger of Zendikar earlier. If you have that in your hand, you're oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll play my Avenger of Zendikar. I'll play some lands. Awesome. Now all of a sudden, and again with dredging, you can get Evolving Wilds back again, fetch lands. So that'd be obviously very good with Landfall. I forgot to mention that earlier. And then yeah, you can grow your plants. That being said, though, you could also Skull Clamp. So it's an equipment for 1, pay 1 to equip it. Crew creatures +1, -1. Whenever crew creature dies, draw 2 cards. Yeah, there's some combo-y things that you can do with this, I am sure. Obviously limited based on mana, but I'm sure there's a way to get mana too. Basically, again, you are, hey, okay, I made a plant by getting a land into play. All right, I equipped this to my plant. My plant died, oh no! I draw 2 cards. Probably dredge again with one of those cards you're drawing to get another land back. Get another land back into play. You can do a lot of crazy things with this. Obviously, a very, very good card. So again, make sure you're considering kind of what direction you want to go. I mean, obviously, you could include both kind of things just in case, but and Skull Clamp's not going to be a bad card if you're okay, I've got a bunch of zombies. I equip it. Oh, darn. Now it doesn't die. But it's going to eventually die and give you value. Or if you have a sacrifice outlet, obviously, it's still very good for that. So make sure you're keeping that in mind, too. Very, very good card. But yeah, maybe consider kind of what direction you're going with this. Are you going all landfall triggers? Are you going, combo, Get Rog kind of stuff? Are you going weird combo, how you lose influence, I talked about earlier, apparently? Are you going, again, zombie tribal, plant tribal, combination of both? Are you going to just go wide? Anthem, there's a lot of different areas that you can go with this commander. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts are on these leaks. Again, I want to reiterate, These are leaks. They have not been officially confirmed. We will not know if they are real until spoiler season, most likely, which is like in a week or so. So make sure you're staying tuned for that, okay? That being said, if you are interested in this commander and your playgroup is 100% okay with you just like proxying it and playing with it and like keep playing with it if it's even not like real actually when spoiler season comes out, then yeah, go for it. Check out those cards, that card list link. If not, yeah, just like bookmark it if you're interested in it too. And like wait till spoiler season happens. Then when spoiler season happens, you're like, oh, it's real. Okay. Oh, go check out that list. Perfect. Okay. Now, make sure you're staying to this channel for more exciting quick takes, spoilers, and more leaks to be sure, because yeah, this ship is sinking, Wizards. We have so many leaks on it. It is ridiculous. And also, right after I'm done talking right here, future Mitch, make sure you put in the cards at the end, okay? Perfect. With all that said, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.